Hello all. How's it going? Welcome to Monday. Uh, I am not going to be there again today. I had another family illness that needs to be attended to, and it is very possible that I will be gone for the entire day. So you may or may not see me at some point during the day, but it is likely that you won't. Anyway, I thought I'd get us going here on our lesson today. We're going to spend the next 3 days talking about and answering the question, what is the middle passage? And so that's going to be our objective, and we're going to have a little, you're going to listen to me talk for a little bit, and then you're going to analyze some documents over the next couple days, and that is going to get you ready for Wednesday when we will answer that question, what is the middle passage? But first, just a reminder, be good to the sub. You remember our sub rules. You guys did a great job last time, so let's do that again. I was very proud of you last time. I expect all good reports again. Um, so let's move forward. Um, let's see, our candidate of the day. I didn't want to ignore that. Instead of doing a candidate of the day, though, someone dropped out of the race. And some of you might know who it is, and some of you might not. It's someone we have yet to talk about. So your homework assignment, I guess if you will, is to find out who that person is. Either ask a friend, ask your parents, look on the news. He dropped out on Friday night. He dropped out. So figure out who that person is, and then tomorrow we will remove that person, that candidate, from the list. So we never really talk about him. So yeah. So you guys need to figure out who that person is. Someone finally dropped out. We'll see if some other people follow suit. So yeah, your warm up was, why weren't there as many slaves in the New England colonies? You should know that deep inside your soul by this point. And if you do not, make sure you get it from a friend. Write it on your warm up under Monday, and you'll be good to go. Very important question to know. Today I'm just gonna give you a really fast overview of the slave trade. There's going to be a video. There's a great movie from the 70s about the slave trade and slavery, and it's called Roots. Your parents have probably seen it. It's really good, and we're gonna watch parts of it. Because it's so good. You'd think it's from the 70s, it's no good, but it still looks awesome, and it's worth a watch. So we'll do that. Probably tomorrow we'll watch a little bit of Roots so you guys can see a little bit of what the middle passage looked like. So that'll be good. There's this quote, slavery is among us, not of choice but of necessity, and unless, as it is to be imagined, our mother country should quit the trade of the sugar colonies, Englishmen must continue to be masters of their slaves. That is from a West Indian governor, 1737. And he is saying, basically, that whites should be masters over their slaves. The English should be masters over their slaves. And they almost need to be masters over their slaves because of um, the amount of money that they are making. They're very well off because of this slave trade, and they want to keep it going. So this is 1737, that quote, before even the American Revolution. So there's that. So let's move on. The middle passage, as you guys learned on Friday about the bad triangle, the triangle trade, the triangle going from Africa, or excuse me, starting in Europe, let's say, going down to Africa, trading goods for slaves, taking those slaves over to the New World and trading the slaves there, picking up goods like molasses, sugar, corn, tobacco, eventually cotton, all kinds of things, taking them either up to the New England colonies for some manufacturing or back to England for some manufacturing and trading up there as well. So it's a triangle that's taking place. So we got the triangle trade there. The middle of that is the middle passage, and that's what we're talking about, where 1.5 million Africans were brought across the Atlantic Ocean to the West Indies, to South America, and then a few up in North America as well. Not as much, surprisingly, as much as the West Indies and South America. So 3 times more Africans came to the British colonies than any other group. Um, so if you think about it, it's more Africans are coming over as opposed to English are coming over, if that makes sense. It's 1.5 million slaves are coming over the British colonies when not nearly that many are making the voyage to start new lives in in North America. Okay, not even close. So 1.5 million back then was a big deal. A lot of people. Many European nations were involved in the slave trade. Great Britain, though, benefits the most. They end up, when it's all said and done, they trade 2.5 million people, million Africans, in the slave trade. Excuse me. During the 18th century, so the 1700s, 19% of those slaves came to the American colonies, and 81% ended up in the West Indies, where Columbus originally landed. So, where they're working on the sugar plantations and things like that. So, most of them aren't coming to what we now know as the United States. That's an important thing to remember. But as we talked about before, many parts of the British economy depended on these slaves. So, the next thing I want to talk to you guys about are slave castles, and we're going to see some of that in the movie. And the Africans were caught in Africa by slave catchers, slave traders, and then they are put in these slave castles, and they're right on the coast, right by the Atlantic Ocean, and they sit there and they wait to be put on the ships. And you can imagine how terrible that would have been. A moment or a few days or weeks of complete confusion and uncertainty about what was going to happen next. And they go to those slave castles and where they are chained. It's basically jails. Castle sounds like a nice word almost, but they were jails. Really bad thing there at those slave castles. They were almost factories where they're starting the process of slavery right there. Just awful. The sale, after being sold to a slave trader, the Africans were branded like cattle. Unfortunately, remember we watched that video, and they were branded with the S on their chest, some of them, to mark them as Sierra Leone, where they came from. They were chained. They had things around their neck, possibly things around their wrists, and things like that. So that's important to remember. Much like cattle or things like that. So not super fun. The journey, which you guys are going to see a little bit better soon, they were chained together, placed below decks on the ships. And as you can imagine, if they are treated like cattle and treated like property, they're not given the nicest rooms down there at the bottom of the ship. They are real close together, chained up, laid down, so they can fit as many people on the ships as possible. Terrible, terrible conditions. They're not getting up all the time and walking around the deck. They're just chained there. And so, they need to use the restroom or they need to eat. All those things are happening just right there while they're laying down. Really unfortunate. Slave traders and catchers used this kind of terminology to describe what that was like. There was loose packing and there was tight packing. And that was a way to describe if they were going to, if it was tight packing, that means they're going to fit as many slaves on there as possible. And unfortunately, if there was tight packing, that means more of them are going to die. But they've taken so many over that the slave trader doesn't care. We've taken so many over, and a lot of them have died, and so, but it doesn't matter because they had so many, so they still are making a profit. Then there's also loose packing, where they're not bringing as many over, and then in theory, not as many of them are going to die. And so therefore, they're going to make a nice profit that way. These are awful things to talk about. I hate even talking about it. But so they described the journey in ways of loose packing and tight packing. That'll be an important thing to remember going forward. So what the slave trader wanted to do. So if you sit around for a long time, let's say you're sick for a few days, you've got you're laying on your couch, you're just watching TV for a few days, your muscles start to do this thing called atrophy, and they become kind of weak and do some weird things. And so if you're below decks on a slave ship, just laying there chained up and you can't move for a few weeks, then you're going to be your muscles are going to start to atrophy. So as what they would do is they would have the slaves in groups at a time go above decks and dance and move around a lot, and they were clearly watched really closely, so that obviously there was no revolt or anything like that. But they're dancing and moving around so that their legs and their body, the muscles don't atrophy. So pretty sad thing that had to happen there as well. It was filthy below deck. It smelled really bad. You can just imagine just the the worst thing you can imagine. Many slaves died from disease such as scurvy and the bloody flux, which we have talked about. When you're in a bad drinking water and bad sanitary conditions, that's where the bloody flux comes in. Also, you're going to read a document soon where some of the slaves tried to commit suicide. They oftentimes would try to jump overboard, not wanting to possibly bring a new baby into the world, or not wanting to bring themselves into the world. And actually, the slave trade ships started building nets on the sides of the boats so that um, to prevent this from happening. So because when they're up there dancing and stuff like that, it's like, oh, let's make a run for it. Let's just get out of here. I don't want any part of where these guys are taking me, and so they just wanted to jump off. So that happened a lot as well. So what we're going to do today, that was just a little bit of background about the slave trade. We're going to look and see some more videos and information as we go forward. But what I want you guys to do is you're going to look at this document, and we're going to call it the Falcon Bridge document. And it's a good reading. So you have the document there, the Falcon Bridge document there that you're going to read, take a look at. Make sure you close read it once over. Feel free to make any marks if you want to. You're eventually going to leave that document there on the table for the next class. And then you're going to fill in the guided questions. And just like the other two things that we've done, keep those guided questions because it's going to help you in your writing. You guys kind of know this by now. It's going to help you in your writing by having those guided questions going. So, excuse me. So you've got the Falcon Bridge document. You've got your guided questions. Read it. Do a good job. Answer them well. And you'll have them for the next day. That's all I have for you. I am sorry that I can't be there today. It makes me sad. I would much rather be there than doing what I have to do today, dealing with sick family. So, yeah, you guys have a great day. Hope you had a good weekend, and see you on Tuesday.